People, something is not adding up. Meet this man right here. His name is Omari Bryant. This man was found hung outside a motel in Georgia. He was only 18 years old, and law enforcement said he took his own life. Now meet this man right here. His name is Robert Fuller. He was only 24 years of age. This man was found hung in Palmdale, California, near City Hall. Law enforcement said this man took his life also. Now meet Dominique Alexander. He was 27 years old, and he was from New York. He was found hung in a park also, and law enforcement said he took his own life. Now meet Javion McGee. He was 24 years old, and he was from Chicago. He was found hung in North Carolina, not far from his pickup truck. And guess what? They say he took his life also. Now meet Denoris Richardson. He was 39 years old. He was found hung in an abandoned house in Alabama. And guess what? They said he took his life also. And people, right before Denoris Richardson was found hung, he had a pending lawsuit against the police. And people, in 2025, Earl Smith was found hung in Albany, New York. He was 58 years old. And people, everyone recently heard about Trey Reed. He was 21 years of age. He was from Mississippi, and he went to Delta State University. They found him hung on campus, and law enforcement said it was no foul play. Now people, the sad truth is I can go on and on, but let me make something clear. This is not what black men do. Black men do not go out and unalive themselves like that. Now people, in my humble opinion, someone got away with unaliving these people. Now people, I am going to say this, and I hope you listen loud and clear. If you do not take the steps to protect yourself, then no one will. Now, what do I mean? Well, you need to stop meeting crazy people online, thinking you can trust them. And people, this goes for men and women. You can go to someone's house that you met online just to find out it was a setup. People, most of the time when someone do something very bad to someone and you hear about it on the news, they trust that person. That's why they got in the car with that individual. That's why they went to their house. And then we hear something crazy on the news like they hung themselves. People, stop it. You should always be your first line of defense. You should always protect yourself first by not putting yourself in harm's way. All of these people I just showed you did not deserve to die. Please never forget them and keep their family in your prayers.
A lot of the different information that I've come across over my years of research, and then just over actually listening and hearing Black men, and which shows why I ultimately believe Black men are a threat, and how and why a empowered Black man or a empowered Black male community is one of the biggest threats to a power system that ultimately depends upon its subjugation to thrive. I think as a Black woman, it's particularly important for us to know this because we're not taught this. We're oftentimes taught that, okay, the Black community as a collective, we're targeted, or, racism, yada, yada. And then obviously Black women are seen as like the double minority. So we're oftentimes seen as being a bigger threat or more subjugated to Black, with comparison to Black men, or oftentimes told that Black men actually have more privileges than us. But we're not taught the ways in which Black men themselves are uniquely targeted. And it's, it's one of the reasons is because we just don't talk about these things. We're not told about these things. We're not given information. We don't learn. And Black women, I don't think, ever really come to this understanding until they're in close relationship with Black men, until they listen to it, until they or have, I think, personal experience anecdotally and recognize that, like, hey, y'all are treated differently. Like, my husband has a completely different experience going to the grocery store than I do. He has a complete experience in general, walking, going to the mall, just going to grab milk, grabbing gas. Like, he has a completely different experience. And it's for no other reason than he's a tall, dark-skinned, muscular Black man that is going to be seen as a threat just for simply existing. I don't have those experiences. So, again, I'm reiterating, these are things that Black men, I think, intrinsically already know. They experience this, even if there's not, the vocabulary, or there's not a lot of scholarship behind it. I think Black men intrinsically know this, but I don't think that understanding is as prevalent among Black women. Now, so why is this important? Or what is the connection between a Trey Reed and what, the threat of Black men being feared? You have this young 21-year-old college student. He's going to college. He's getting his higher education. He's doing the things that Black women oftentimes claim Black men don't do. He's getting his education. He's putting himself in a position where he can get a white collar job. why would somebody like him, in my opinion, why would somebody like him be feared? And now I want to briefly just turn your attention to just American history. And if we understand the history behind just lynchings, the long history of lynchings, and how Black men, specifically successful, prosperous, and prominent Black men, were generally the targets of lynchings. There's this stereotype that the Black men who were lynched were, usually predators. They were people who were sexually promiscuous or who were dangerous to society. But in reality, the Black men historically who were generally targeted and unalived and lynched were oftentimes the ones who were leading the charge as far as economic change and leading the charge as far as just overall improving the community, right? So again, it says, yeah, Black men who were lynched were successful, prosperous, and prominent community members. Their myths of Black men as sexual predators were used as a common pretext for lynchings. Civil rights activist Ida B. Wells Barnett exposed the economic motivations behind these acts of racial terrorism. So again, the successful Black men were oftentimes the ones who were targeted because they posed economic threat. Here's one example right here. I'm just going to show you real quick. Stop screen. We have, let me see right here. The People's Grocer, right? So again, I said in Memphis, Tennessee, 3 Black co-owners of the People's Grocery, Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Will Stewart, were lynched by a white mob. The men were successful entrepreneurs who had opened a store that directly competed with a white-owned business. The white grocer, angered by the competition, instigated a harassment campaign that escalated into violence, resulting in the unaliving of these 3 men. Right? So again, why were they a threat? They were economic competition. They were economic competition. At a time, 1892, at a time, Black men were very much connected to a labor force. That's just one of many examples. You go to 1916, South Carolina, a white mob lynched Anthony P. Crawford, a successful business Black farmer and landowner. The murder occurred after he dared to argue with a white merchant over the price of cottonseed. Following the lynching, white residents seized Crawford's property and his family was forced to flee the area. Right? That's one example. Obviously, the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre in 1921. Again, a prospering Black neighborhood of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was known as the Black Wall Street due to its numerous successful businesses. But in 1921, a mob attacked the community, destroying over 1,000 homes and businesses and killing an estimated 300 people. And y'all remember when that case just, I think, was a few years ago? Within the last 5 years, you had survivors of the Tulsa, Oklahoma, who were fighting for reparations, and it was denied. Unfortunately, it was denied. But this is documented. This is like state documented, all of these things. And yet, even more recently, you had survivors of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the massacre, who talked about it, who's sharing it. There's plenty of evidence, and they unfortunately were not given justice with respect to that particular massacre. The lynching of Matthew Williams. This is Matthew Williams, was a 23-year-old Black man who was lynched in Salisbury, Maryland. During the Great Depression, the violence against him and other Black laborers was a manifestation of white rage in response to economic anxieties. The case was investigated by the state's governor, but despite witnesses identifying law enforcement officers as ringleaders of the mob, no one was indicted. Right? So I just gave you 4 examples. Those are just 4 examples, 4 of many, many examples. But again, what is the connection between Trey Reed and these different examples that I gave you? These were successful Black men who were building businesses, entrepreneur, or at least, on the trajectory of being successful, economically prosperous, doing something for the community. And they were targeted specifically for that. And, I don't know about you, but many of us African Americans, like if you just talk to our ancestors, like my great aunt, she's 94. We had a family reunion last year. And, I sat down and talked to her, and she was telling me about my great grandfather, who evidently, I know this now, was a very successful, or I think it was actually, no, not my great great grandfather. Sorry. My 2 times great grandfather, who was a very successful businessman at his time. She was telling me, just the issues that he went through and how he was able to acquire a few hundred acres of land, but ended up ended up losing it because of some legality things. And then, one of my uncles, I think, got into it with the Klan and they ended up having to escape. And I mean, my family is partially in California because they ended up escaping due to a lot of the different racial injustice they're experiencing and being targeted because of some of the success they're starting to have in their farm, right? So like many Black folks, if you just sit and talk to your elders, of those who are still around, they will tell you of their own experiences, or they may tell you of their own stories where they've actually seen this stuff or been on the receiving end of this stuff or escaped some of this racial violence. So it's not like very far away. It's not like you have to go into the history books to see these things. All you got to do is talk to an elder. So again, what I'm trying to articulate is somebody like Trey Reed. He represents a long history of successful Black men, or men who are going down the line of success, being perceived as a threat. And the reason, the different reasons I gave you, the reason all of these guys were targeted was because they were at the epicenter. They were the leaders of what would be Black economic progress. And that can be seen as a threat to a system that relies upon the labor force. And I think there are elements of this that continue today, right? If you think of the 13th Amendment, we think of the prison industrial complex, if we think of many of the different things that are still very much powered by men, it's like, of course, there are Black families, individual Black families that can be successful, individual Black men. Even many of you guys who maybe are listening to me now, you might have experienced success in your own life, which is great. But what I'm trying to articulate, or what I'm starting to see, is like, again, this whole idea of, Black men haven't built stuff, Black men haven't built towns. Not only is it a lie, like it's ahistorical, and it is actually, in my opinion, it's highly disrespectful when you understand the way Black Americans have been systematically targeted. It's highly disrespectful to those who actually, were persecuted and suffered because of the progress they were trying to make. So although there are Black men who are doing well, we have to understand there have been systems, and there has been a concerted effort over the decades, obviously, to keep the community as a whole subjugated. And that cannot be overlooked. And that continues today. This is why we see the Trey Reeds. And, I would hope that this would stop, but this is why it's like every single year, I feel like there is some form of a lynching of a Black man, whether it be physically, whether through some, a police unaliving that goes viral, whether it be through his reputation, where, there's some Black man who's always, in the hall of shame, where his whole career is being torn down because of some alleged, just wrongdoings. Whether it be through just a character assassination, like there's always a Black man, and from what I've noticed in media, there's always a Black man figured who is being lynched, physically, literally, socially, economically. Like there's just, in my opinion, there's this theme, and again, it goes back to like what I've come to see more and more. It's simple as a successful Black man, or successful Black men as a collective, being seen as a threat to a system that depends upon their subjugation. So that is what I believe someone like Trey Reed actually represents.